Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very respected and a very tall corporate leader from Bangalore, India, Mr. Suresh Narayanan. Suresh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me on the brand called you.
Thank you. Mr. Narayanan is the former chairman and managing director of Nestlé India Limited. He has institutionalized the spirit of people, purpose, and partnership by celebrating diversity, inclusivity, and largeness of spirit within his organization. Given the amazing work that he's done through his career, understandably, he has been recognized, felicitated, and awarded several times. So, Suresh, my first question to you. Tell me about your journey, which has been quite incredible. What were some defining moments early on in your career that influenced the leader you eventually became?
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for that question. I have quite a strange twist to my getting into a corporate career.
Mhm.
Actually, I didn't want to be a corporate person.
Okay.
I wanted to be a bureaucrat, and was training to give the UPSC exams, and was studying therefore at the Delhi School of Economics and not at an IIM because I wanted to pursue a career as a civil servant.
Mhm.
And that time, a company called Hindustan Lever, then, which became
Yeah.
HUL, came, I think, scouting for talent. It's the first time that they came.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, I found myself with a job. And I checked with my dad that time. He said, son, after 30 years, I'm not getting very much different from what these guys are paying you.
Mhm.
And maybe it's a respected company. I know they make Dalda and Lux soap.
Mhm.
So why don't you join Hindustan Lever and make a career for yourself?
Yeah.
And that's how I got into the corporate world. So it's by accident. And
Amazing.
I always say to tell people that those who plan their careers meticulously, I tell them that sometimes careers can be accidents and can be
Absolutely.
pleasant accidents as well. So mine was a
Absolutely.
pleasant accident, and I served for almost 44 years in the corporate world.
Mhm.
A few defining moments. I think I've had my fair share, Ashutosh, as all of us have, of success and failure. My first assignment in Hindustan Lever, which was then transiting its animal feeds business into Lipton,
Mhm.
was to actually close down a factory in Ahmedabad.
Mhm.
At the age of 22, I was given responsibility for an area, and for a small business, I think it was all of what, a
Yeah.
crore and a half in the early 80s. And the task was to close down the business, and shift the factory to a different location. I think that taught me the power to face adversity,
Mhm.
and to the power of empathy and compassion, because here were 50 workers who were as old as my dad, and I had to let them go.
Mhm.
And all the feelings and emotions of this being your first assignment in your career, and the unfairness of it all,
Mhm.
of letting go of people who had responsibilities in life.
Mhm.
But still, it was a painful experience, but it was a very good learning experience. So much so that the workers gave me a farewell instead of the other way around. So that was
Amazing.
one of my first brushes with
Mhm.
adversity and crisis. And then later on in my career, there were two or three other incidents which I think defined it. One was the large integration of the Lipton and the Brook Bond systems
Mhm.
into a unified branch in the West.
Yeah.
That was a major mammoth assignment in both managing channels and also managing people and managing
Mhm.
unions.
Mhm.
And that taught me the power of diplomacy and the power of tact and the
Right.
power of remaining patient for the right moment rather than
Mhm.
jumping in all guns blazing. Then I had my fair share of failures as well. I mean, I launched a Tetra drink in those days, competing with a fruity called
Mhm.
Treetop.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the treetop, it fell off the tree, and it wasn't very successful. But there
Right.
again, I learned a lesson in leadership, that the boss of the show, the head of the division, took the rap, and he said, I'm responsible for it. These guys are young brand managers. They clearly are not responsible for what happened.
Hmm.
So standing up and being counted was one of the lessons that I learned,
Amazing.
that the buck stops at the leader's desk.
Absolutely
So
right.
different incidents after that. The Arab Spring, I was caught in the Arab Spring for a couple of years, and the turmoil of it all. And then a calm posting to the Philippines with
Mm,
Nestlé, translated into within 4 months to be transported back to India to take care of the Maggie crisis.
mm.
And that was in itself. So I'm a little bit of an albatross, Ashutosh.
Yeah.
I either fall into a crisis or create a crisis. These are two things that,
Well,
that
I know. I
I
mean,
managed to do.
I remember some of the brands you've spoken about, but I remember reading about you during the entire Maggie crisis and how well you handled that. But tell me, Suresh, you've led Nestle in several international markets. How have these diverse experiences shaped your leadership style? Because culturally, you were in many, many different markets.
No, I think Ashutosh, the biggest leadership lesson that one gets working across cultures uh, is the is the value of tolerance and acceptance.
Mm,
I think we and typically it also applies to many of us Indians. We always go to a place thinking that we will Indianize the place, that we will try and find common templates between the
correct.
Indian culture and the foreign culture.
Mm,
Little realizing that the foreign culture itself has its own roots and its own gravitas that needs
right.
to be appreciated. So I think tolerance and acceptance and a greater degree of focus on uh, first understanding before being understood.
Mm,
I think as leaders, we typically go into a place and we pretend as if we understand everything and
correct.
don't give ourselves the time to understand before being
Mm,
understood. So
right.
these are two important lessons that I
Very
certainly learned
interesting.
in my
Very, very
cross
interesting.
cultural exposure.
Fascinating. You often reference the wisdom of Kabir. How has this philosophy influenced your leadership journey, or how has Kabir influenced your leadership journey?
Look, I think the love for Kabir Ashutosh started actually in my school.
Mm,
I had a very inspiring Hindi teacher called Mishra ji,
mhm.
who taught us the Dohas of Kabir.
Right.
At that time, it was simply for me Dohas of Kabir,
Mm,
and I enjoyed reciting them and I enjoyed listening to them. But I never fully understood the meaning of them because I was a boy and
mm,
not been through the travails of life to understand it. But later on, I realized that in the wisdom of Kabir, which is 600-700 years old, for this simple Julaha or weaver, as
mm,
we call him, to come up with the most profound and yet the most simple of statements, there was power in that
mm,
simplicity, and also the relatability that I could understand it, and when I could come, I could talk about Western philosophers, but honestly, nobody would get the hang of it in an audience.
mm,
Whereas the Doha of Kabir would make that same statement much more powerfully, and that the focus on the self, the focus on the journey, the focus on humility, the focus on conscience, all of this has influenced me considerably. And
mm,
I must thank the Mishraji for having put me on that path
mm,
more than 50 years.
mm. For my viewers and listeners, can you give me one Doha of Kabir, which is one of your favorites?
I think this is one which is relevant to today's times, Ashutosh. And Kabir talked about language.
Mm,
He said, "ऐसी बानी बोलिए मन
mm,
का आपा खोए,
mm.
औरन को शीतल करे, आपू शीतल होए."
Beautiful.
Speak in a language that not only makes you calm and
Mm,
gives you peace, but also gives the other person calm and peace. This
fascinating.
rhetoric, unfortunately,
Yeah,
we are subjugating today,
correct.
and I think these words for me take a lot of meaning.
Absolutely. Very powerful words, I agree. You've also often been referred to as a quintessential people's leader or a people-centric CEO. Can you tell me what does this truly mean?
Look, I think for me, people centricity means two things:
Hmm,
that people are the pivots for performance, and people are the pivots for passion within the organization.
hmm,
So when I talk about people, purpose, and
partnership.
partnerships, I also add to it planet and performance.
Hmm,
And planet and performance, so sustainability and sustained performance comes only through people. I've yet to come across, Ashutosh, in my long career, an organization that is run by robots and that is achieving results without the power of people. People don't appear on the balance sheet of the company, and yet they make the balance sheet. Isn't that ironic?
Correct, correct. How have you managed to balance empathy with tough decisions that leadership often demands? And you've been in some very demanding situations as the chairman and MD.
Yeah, no, Ashutosh, I think in my mind, I've always looked at leadership as two parts. One is karma and one is dharma. So karma is what you have to do, and you have to do that and do that well. And dharma is what is the underlying leadership principle of the job. I don't think as a leader, I am expected to win a popularity contest. I'm expected to win the trust of people. And in winning the trust of people, sometimes you have to tread on a difficult path, a rocky cliff, and that has to be done by the leader as part of the dharma of the job. So the karma of the job is to do it empathetically, to do it with compassion. But the dharma of the job means that you have to take tough calls and you have to take tough decisions, because ultimately you are there for the performance. I mean, no organization, in the organizations you worked for or I worked for, employ us for charity. They
Correct.
keep us because they get performance.
Absolutely.
And they get shareholder value. So if that I don't realize, and if I don't subjugate myself to that need, then I think I'm not fulfilling the task of a leader that I should be doing.
Well said. What role does humility play in sustaining long-term leadership success?
I think humility is another, to me, it's a great virtue, Ashutosh, and unfortunately, not a virtue that is greatly appreciated in the corporate world, or in fact, even in society in general.
Yeah.
There are two things that humility gives us. Humility gives me the power to not take myself too seriously. And I think that helps you in difficult times. If you take yourself too seriously, then you are more interested in the impression rather than the impact. And I think we are, as leaders, meant to be impactful and not just impressionistic. And the second aspect of humility, which appeals to me, is the fact that it makes you far more approachable. I mean, there have been in my career instances where people have come and consulted about their weddings, their children's education, their family troubles, their friendship issues, etc., despite the difference in hierarchy. And I think that really happens because they think you are as an approachable person. So being approachable and also not taking yourself too seriously are two clear benefits of humility.
Well said. My next question is about crisis. And, I'm not sure if you're at liberty to speak about the Maggie crisis that you went through, but what principles can guide a leader to communicate with their teams during a crisis?
Look, I think the first thing is to understand that people are the ones who are the most concerned about a crisis. Typically what happens in large corporates, and you've been part of those, so you understand this better, is that between corporate affairs and legal, your mouth will be shut. You'll be told, no, don't talk about this, because this is prejudicial. But I've always believed in transparent and clear communication to the people on where we stand, on what we stand for. Authenticity is an important aspect of leadership for me. So being authentic, constantly communicating. If you don't want to communicate, don't be a leader. Step aside and let somebody else be a leader. But because communication is an essential element of leadership. The third is clarity.
Correct.
One of the things that we reward people for is complexity. The more complex the communication, the more praise they get. In my dictionary, the clarity of the communication means the simplicity of the communication.
Right.
And finally, I think the capability of the leader to be able to ask the right questions rather than giving all the answers. Because one must realize that with humility, that it's only one head and there are 1,000 heads around you which are better than one. And I think that capability to be able to to communicate with clarity and also to accept the fact that teamwork is an important element of crisis is extremely important.
Great
And
response.
lastly, and but not the least, is standing up and being counted. Ultimately, as a leader, you can only call the shots if you can take the bullets. So you
Amazing.
cannot fire the shots if you can't take the bullets coming your way. And
Correct.
that is a task of leadership.
Correct. Phenomenal. Great response. So we've covered the first P, which was people. I want to move to the second P, which is purpose now. What does purpose mean to you in the context of corporate leadership? And how did you ensure purpose extended beyond profit to societal and environmental impact in your company?
Look, I think purpose is, for me, Ashutosh, more than simply a set of words that are strung up at the reception of a building.
Correct.
Or in the boardroom of a corporate that talks about a flamboyant set of words that are going to be put together. Purpose for me is the essence of the organization. What does the organization stand for? And what does the organization represent to the consumer? Because I've been in the consumer industry. What does it mean to the consumer? So purpose goes together with values. Values goes together with behavior, and behaviors and values and purpose determine outcomes. So therefore, it is inextricably linked. And the simplicity and clarity of the purpose and the clarity of your values will determine the quality of your performance, the quality of your culture, the quality of your people. And I think, to me, it is an inextricable part. And whether or not people are able to mouth the mission statement or the vision statement of the organization, but they should certainly be able to understand what the purpose of the organization is.
Right.
And I think, to me, the purpose has to be broken down to the lowest common denominator, which is the front line. If the front line of your organization don't understand what the purpose of the organization is, then I think you've wasted all your time and effort in making it more complex than it should be. So clarity and simplicity is extremely important in purpose.
But would you be able to give me an example of how purpose does not just remain a slogan, but a lived reality in everyday business?
Look, I think one of the things that we did at the height of the Maggie crisis is we crafted a growth model for the company, and it was called Grow to Win.
Okay.
And the Grow to Win model fundamentally, and it was audacious at that time because the company was going down the chute, and here we were talking about growing to win. But we said we put three principles behind the Grow to Win. We said fast, focused, and flexible. So we said any organization that privileges speed, fast, focused, being focused on the right elements of the value chain, and flexible, the capability to learn and unlearn as we go along, will be the successful model of the future. So all business processes, all organization processes, all communication practices, all operational practices, all standard operating procedures were pivoted around the Grow to Win model and around these three principles. And these were predicated on consumer insight-led innovation, on avoiding waste within the organization, and privileging the value addition of teams rather than just the performance of people perfunctorily on a particular job. So all of this, if engineered from a purpose, can translate into set of practices which then people can associate with. So there is that aha moment where a person in the organization, whether at the middle level or at the higher level, is able to say, fast, focus, and flexible, and growing to win for me means 1, 2, 3, 4.
Fascinating.
That's how it needs to be translated.
Yeah, amazing. And how can a leader align personal purpose with organizational goals?
Look, I think, Ashutosh, to me, it's the cart before the horse. A leader whose own set of values and purpose does not resonate with the organizational purpose and values should not even try and make the effort, but should exit the organization. Only those who see the purpose of the organization as being resonant with their own purpose and values can be successful as leaders, because you have to live and breathe and demonstrate and perform and talk what is your purpose and values. And if it is dissonant with the organization purpose and values, you will be a fake and you will not be authentic. And inauthentic leadership only leads to poor performance. I've never seen it leading to outstanding performance.
And would you be able to share an example of how purpose guided you in making a difficult decision?
Look, I think the management of the organization during COVID, which we had, which was probably the worst crisis that the world has been through and that corporates have been through. There were 2 or 3 things that we were clear as an organization, because we are a people-centric company. Number one, we were one of the few companies to announce an insurance policy for all the frontline, which is the distributor salesmen during that period, to take care of their medical expenses should something, God forbid, happen to them, with an exceptional compensation to be made in the eventuality of death of any of the people. Similar practice was put forward as far as the workers in the factories were concerned, because they were coming every day to work. The second principle that we said was, during this period, there will be no restructuring and there will be no retrenchment of people. So we said we will try and ensure that everybody has their job and that they are able to maintain their families and their livelihoods, because this is the worst time to do anything. So we will take a hit in terms of our bottom line if need be, but we will not compromise on the people-centered practices and principles that we need to follow. So all of this was done. We had a good run during COVID. The organization also came out stronger because people felt that they were cared for in this organization and they were not just an employee token number that they were carrying.
Fascinating. Let's now talk about the third P, which is philosophy. What has been your philosophy on building strong partnerships? We'll talk about partnerships, not philosophy. What has been your philosophy on building strong partnerships both within and outside the organization?
Look, I think for me, there are 3 principles of partnership that is very important. One is alignment on purpose. The purpose that I have as an organization and the partner has to be aligned. Then a pursuit of principles, which is, it has to be a principle which is based on fairness and equality above all. And if it is an unequal relationship or if it is a biased relationship, it is not a partnership. And the third one is a persistence of sustainability. A partnership that is that's enduring over a period of time is the one where the principles and the purpose and the practices are followed over a long period of time. And I think I was privileged with those relationships in Nestlé, because many of our distributors, many of our suppliers are 1 generation, 2 generations old in the company. And they have all lived, and all of these people came to help. And the power of partnerships is so important, Ashutosh. During the Maggie crisis, not one partner of ours, not one distributor of ours, not one supplier of ours ever went to the media and said, this is a rotten company, or this company has sunk my profits. They've stood by the company like soldiers in battle, waiting for us to take the right steps and quietly and efficiently executing what they were asked to do at that period of time.
Fascinating.
That is the power of partnerships.
Absolutely. And how can a leader cultivate partnerships that go beyond transactional value and create lasting impact?
Look, I think that is through two principles. One is energizing them, which is ensuring that they see a longer term stake in the organization. And the third one is, the second one is empowering them to share ideas with you. I think every partnership is looking for sharing ideas. And unless you are able to, should not be a one-way street. That I am a partner of XYZ company, so I am subservient to it. it is an equal partner, which means that I will find 5 things you're doing right. I will also highlight 5 things that you could do better. And it is the receptiveness and the humility of the corporate to accept it and to do something about it. I think when that happens over a period of time, you talk about a robust partnership and not a transactional relationship.
Amazing. I have time for 2 more questions for you. How can corporate leaders partner with governments and communities to drive sustainable growth?
Look, Ashutosh, I always believe that trying to put everything at the government's door, of saying that they are responsible for the environment, they're responsible for everything that happens on the planet, is firstly unrealistic, and it's also a bit unfair. Corporates have to rise to the occasion. I mean, keeping a clean planet or keeping a green planet is as much a responsibility of a corporate as it is of a government.
Right.
I mean, as Mahatma Gandhi said, we have borrowed the planet from our future generations.
Correct.
We are not the owners of the planet. So therefore, in that light, I've always looked at an active participation, and the organizations I've worked in, sustainability was an intrinsic part of the method of the company. And therefore it was whether it was conserving energy or water or greenhouse gases or on plastics or on packaging or on avoiding waste, all of it was essential part of the operating philosophy of the company. And when you make it an essential part of the operating philosophy of the company, it no longer becomes a nice to have, it becomes a need to have. And sustainability, in my definition, for a corporate is a need to have, not just a nice to have.
Very interesting. And my last question for you, Suresh, if you had to give one message to future leaders about people, purpose, and partnership, what would it be?
Well, I would say to persist with people, purpose, and partnerships, because only then you will be able to do something for your planet, and you will be able to sustain the performance that you're paid to do.
Well said. And on that note, I just want to say, what an incredible conversation this has been. I remember when in business school, we used to learn about the 4 P's of marketing. Today, you've given me the 5 P's of Suresh Narayanan, which are people, purpose, partnership, planet, and performance. You've also given me 3 very interesting words from your philosophy of grow to win, which is fast, focused, and flexible. Thank you, Suresh, for talking to me about your incredible journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many different aspects of your leadership, and we've taking away so many amazing lessons for all my viewers and listeners. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you very much for your questions and for involving me in your podcast. I think it's very, very interesting. In as much as you liked what I said, I loved your questioning. I think it's very wise and very, very thoughtful. And I sincerely hope that whatever content we have been able to share is useful to the listeners at some stage.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you again. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.